Good morning, and welcome to today's session of Kane Conversations. Thrive in any environment. My name is Dan Smith, and I'm a proud alumnus of the University of Miami. I'm also the chairman-elect of the University of Miami President's Council. I feel very fortunate to be here with you today. I'm really thrilled to see that we have Hurricane alumni represented across the entire country on today's session. And I'd also like to invite you again this afternoon to participate in the second session focused on gaining experience, skills, and connections during these difficult times. That webinar will take place at 5 p.m. Eastern Time and will offer ways to skill up and connect this summer with featured alumni, George Badahu of Tesla, Lionel Moise from ABC News, Pallavi Pal from IHS Markit, and be moderated by Wendy Ann Dixon-Dubois, who is the University of Miami Black Alumni Society president. So a couple of logistics before we get started. Before I turn things over to our speakers this morning, I'd like to share a few logistical items to ensure that you get the most out of today's conversation. The chat feature will be unavailable, so we ask that you submit your questions via the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen. The feature will remain open throughout the presentation, and we will do our best to answer as many questions as possible during the time slot allotted. So let me spend a few moments introducing our speakers. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Dean Myers. Dean received his bachelor's in business administration as well as his master's in business administration from the University of Miami. He's the former global vice president for the Coca-Cola Company, spanning a career of over 34 years, author of The Boardroom Buddha, which is in all aspects a leader's field manual for effective communication. He's also an accomplished keynote speaker. I've had the pleasure of hearing him present to multiple groups. Very dynamic, really insightful. He's also a spectacular University of Miami alumnus, long-standing University of Miami President's Council member, and I can speak personally, just a great guy. Dynamic visionary. I think you'll really enjoy his conversation. It's also my pleasure to introduce you this morning to Jonathan Vilma. I think we can all appreciate the incredible athletic accomplishments of Jonathan with our University of Miami and his multiple years in the NFL, culminating with all-pro selections. But I think what I hope you will come away from today's conversation is equally, if not more impressive, the depth of his business leadership skills. I've had the opportunity to meet Jonathan briefly at a couple of events, and I always come away from the conversations with a real appreciation for the diversity of his leadership style. He's an accomplished entrepreneur, and also an amazing alumni member serving as a University of Miami Board of Trustee. With that, I hope that you enjoy the session, and Jonathan, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks for having me. A pleasure to be on the Thrive webinar with my main man, Dean Myers. I actually met Dean in Chicago with Dan, and this was, about 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And as Dan said, we had some very good conversations. We talked about Miami, of course, state of the program. And interestingly, what got me more excited was talking more with Dan and Dean about their success in their respective careers. And, that has always excited me, has always attracted me. So, when Dean wrote this book, The Boardroom Buddha, one, very interested in it. Two, I was actually a little nervous because I'm like, what in the world would Dean put in this book that can be said publicly? I really had to figure out what can he really say in here. And, it's been great. So Dean and Dan, thanks for having me. I would love to get started. Do I just start now with the questions and get rolling?
Well, John, thank you very much. I'm live. You can hear me okay, right?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Listen, first, Dan, great introduction. I'm sure it's going to cost me big time down the road. I was like, who were you talking about? And
You're a wise
Jonathan,
man.
he did you right, Jonathan. He did you right.
Okay.
Anyway,
Good.
let me give you just a little background set up before the questions. You know, I retired from Coca-Cola last year after 34 years. But during my career, which included Coca-Cola and McDonald's, McDonald's was my customer, small customer in 109 countries around the world with a lot of complexity, a lot of volatility, a lot of high stakes and high reward and high risk. And we were doing great. And for the last several years at work, I was thinking, how can we do better? I mean, everybody needs to up their game, and we were doing great. And I couldn't find any answers. And the common refrain was things like, we need to work smarter, not harder. I was saying, come on. I mean, we're working so hard. No, you're not working smarter. You need to work harder. Well, what does that mean? Give me the how. Give me the how. How does that work? It's a beautiful, beautiful sentence, a beautiful sentence. So I started thinking about what are the key ingredients for success versus failure. And in my career, I had a lot of success and I had plenty of failure. When you're in the game, that's what happens. And I came upon a few key principles that when I was true to those principles, tremendous things happened. And when I violated those principles, things didn't go so well. And I started speaking about these principles in our work and with my teams. And it got very exciting because the feedback was like, oh, thank you. This helps me, helps me. And the people said, you got to write a book. You got to write a book. So when I retired, I wrote a book. And it's about the things I can talk about and about how things can work better. And I'm happy to be able to share those with everybody today. So thank you to the University of Miami and John. Yeah, we met a few years ago, and I feel the same way. You know, you want to be around winners. Maybe that's principle number 6 or principle number 1. Be around winners. Funny things happen along the way. So John, up to you. Where we're going to go.
First, tell us the name is the Boardroom Buddha, Dean. So tell us why the name Boardroom Buddha? Why Buddha?
Yeah, good question. People ask me that. I'm not a Buddhist, although I believe in a lot of things of Buddhism. Buddhism is a spirit. It's not a religion. And I've always been attracted to, you know, things that I don't know much about. So I've done a lot of work around it. I probably know this much, like very little. But 2 things stand out for me about being Buddha. Now, you don't have to be a monk and hide away in a cave in a forest for 20 years to be Buddha-like, okay? So 2 things. One of the key principles is that see things as they are, not what you want them to be. And we all see things as we wish they were, and it doesn't help you. And one of the principles is try to get your mind to see things as they really are. Then you have a chance to be successful. The other key principle, which I love about Buddhism, is this idea around self-awareness. Man, if we were more self-aware, wouldn't things be different? But it's hard. And there's a great line, quote from Buddha. He says, conquering yourself is better than winning, and conquering yourself is better than winning 1,000 battles, because that victory is yours, can't be taken away from you, not by angels or devils or heaven or hell. Conquer yourself, know yourself, and then you have a really good chance to be great. So that's what I like about it. And then the Boardroom Buddha kind of sounded nice, and I thought it'd be a good book. And sometimes when I'm at my best, I am Buddha-like. When I'm at my best. So that's where that came from.
Well, you mentioned a couple of the principles outlined in your book. Can you give us examples of how the 5 examples of the 5 universal principles that you have in your book, and have any of those changed your outlook, or has your outlook changed on any of these principles today?
Yeah, that's a interesting question, because has my outlook changed? It's only changed in that I wish I knew those principles 20 years ago. They're more and more important today than they ever were. And that's what a test of a principle is time. It's always relevant. And that's what's exciting about these principles. I think they're more important than yesterday. And so when I do my speaking and some of the consulting, I use real life examples of my career and these principles. But I'm going to share a dimension which I think anybody on this webinar could appreciate and use today to fix a problem they're dealing with. And it's in the context of the principle number 4, which is alignment before action and adjust often. And when I think about my projects, we all run projects. Now, whether you're in the business world or a doctor or a lawyer or a policeman or a teacher, you have projects, you have things you need to get done. And I found that the source of success in anything you're trying to get done is strong alignment early. And the source of failure of those projects that never get done right, that always get repeated, that go on forever and ever and ever, is lack of alignment. Same coin, different side. So alignment is so hard to do because we think it's slow. I don't have time to get Dan Smith on the page. I'll go back to Dan later when I'm ready. Guess what? If he's not on the page now, he's not going to be on the page 6 weeks later. You just slowed things down. And I want to share one other thing around alignment, action, adjustment. Probably won't be our only football comparison or analogy. There was a great football player named Jim Otto. Jim Otto played at the University of Miami, and he went on to the NFL, AFL, NFL, was all pro, top 100 players of all time. And there's a story about Jim Otto, and Jonathan, you know this. On Monday after the games on Sunday, the routines for most football players, now may change now from 10, 20 years ago, you watch film. What happened in the game? And the whole team gets together and they watch film. And traditionally, when there's a great play, the players get excited and they want to show that play again. I want to see that hit by Jonathan Vilmore on Vanover across the middle. I want to see that hit. I want to watch it again and again and again, which is fun. But Jim Otto was one of the rare pros that when he missed a block, he was a center, when he made a holding penalty, when he made a mistake, he said, let me see that again. Let me see what I did wrong. And that's why he's a top 100 player of all time. The inspection of your work doesn't get done in the business world as much as it should because it's embarrassing. Who wants to watch your failures over and over again? But if you don't adjust, review and adjust, you can't be successful. So I think that's a principle that I find powerful and beneficial when honored.
Yeah, and that's a great segue into adjusting what we're experiencing now with COVID-19 and businesses having to adjust. Has this made your book even more relevant dealing with COVID-19? Everything is Zoom now, virtual meetings. Yeah. How does your book now apply? How relevant is your book now?
Well, certainly COVID-19 presents many challenges that we hadn't thought about. But what's interesting, I published the book on February 27th. Interesting date. Like maybe a few days before COVID became like the pandemic that it is today, right? Now, I wrote it all last year. And I have a chapter in the book, chapter 12. It's called We Live in a VUCA World, V-U-C-A. And it stands for volatility. Yeah, we got some of that. Uncertainty. Yeah. Complexity and ambiguity. Now, I wrote that book about the world before COVID, was full of volatility and complexity and ambiguity. So today, yeah, I think it's even more relevant. And one thing that presents a challenge, I talk a lot about, the value in the conversations and getting personal and understanding each other. It's very hard to do on a Zoom. So we have to work harder to find out what the real story is in the relationships in the business. That's a challenge. The other challenge, I think, in COVID, amongst many, is that we have to be careful that everyone will view this in their own eyes. It has been very eye-opening to me, the differences of reactions to something that no one knows what's going to happen. And so this is the uncertainty on steroids. And we just have to listen and think about all the things going on, because there are no obvious answers. So it creates a need to be more patient, to be a better listener, and to have more empathy. And those that can build those tools can survive this better than those that are angry and react poorly and aren't really thoughtful. So, no answer on COVID, but that's I think it's more important now.
Understood.
Yeah.
Now, when I read your book, the third principle was making the invisible visible. Can you give us an example in your career of when you made the invisible visible?
Yeah. There's 5 principles. This one, I could have so many good examples of this. So the premise goes like this. So you really don't know what's going on. Just say that. You just don't know what's always going on. You can think you know what's going on. I think I heard that person say this. I think this is going on. So I'll give you a real life example. That was the biggest deal I've ever done at Coca-Cola in my 34 years. It created 1 billion cases of business, and which is, even for Coke, 1 billion, anything with a B, it's pretty big. So years ago, I had the pleasure of hosting a top executive of McDonald's to come to Atlanta. And I don't want to give exact names and everything, but I'll call him Roberto. Roberto was going to come in, and he was the top guy globally. And he wanted to learn about our business at Coke. How are we doing? What do we need? So we put all the show together and all the decks, and everybody had everything planned out. And okay, that's the brief, right? He wants to know what's going on. So we went to dinner at a local restaurant in Atlanta, and then we went to the Ritz-Carlton for an after-dinner drink in Buckhead. It's called a different name now. And I was sitting there, and I said, something didn't feel right. I said, Roberto, come on. You're coming down to Atlanta just to find out how things are going on. I asked him this one question. What's most important to you now? Not why, not what's going on. What's most important? And he told me something that I could never have guessed of what he wanted to learn and what he wanted to get involved in with Coke. And I would never have guessed that in a million years. And I said to him, Roberto, I can make that happen tomorrow. That is no problem. I'm glad you told me this. And then he asked me a question. What's most important to you today with the business? And I told him about a business model I want to get McDonald's to accept and be interested in. He says, show it to me. So I showed it to him, and he said, that makes sense. We can make that happen. So this is the napkin from the Ritz-Carlton like 11 years ago that I drew the business plan out. This is it.
That's awesome, Dean.
This is not a whole deck. This is not like 8 hours of meetings. We drew this out and we said, let's do this. And the next day we had meetings, and this turned out to over 1 billion cases of business. Great for McDonald's, great for McDonald's consumers, and great for Coca-Cola. So when those 3 things happen, it's amazing.
So a billion cases on a napkin. That's what you're telling me.
Yeah, pretty well. The idea, yeah. You know what? You don't have to complicate things. But the 1 billion cases, because we found out what was most important to each other, not what was obviously important. And that's the challenge. Listen, next time you're in a meeting, John,
yeah,
and you're in a meeting, you're now broadcasting for Fox, and you're going to have meetings, and you're going to get around, talk strategy. And the meeting would be much easier if everybody in that room wore a white t-shirt and said, here's what I want, here's what I don't want, and here's why I'm here. But they won't do that. So it's your job to find out what's really important to the people around the table. And when you do, you have a good meeting. So
Now,
something to think about.
I like it. I like it. Now, in your dealings, you have all these people, as you just mentioned, and they don't write it down on a white T-shirt what they want, and some of them have ulterior motives and could be toxic.
Yeah.
How have you dealt with the toxic individuals that you've come across in your career, and how did you apply these principles when dealing with the toxic people?
Yeah, well, I tell you what, it's hard. It's hard. I mean, everybody knows who's been in the office environment or wherever you are, and you see that person walking down the hall that for whatever reason, it's like, oh my God, I got to go the other direction.
Right.
But sometimes you have to work with people who you haven't picked to be your partner in things. So a couple of things. First of all, it brings out an interesting nuance of the principles. The principles are most valuable under pressure or when there's a lot of emotion or when the stakes are high. I guarantee you, we haven't seen each other in a few years, we can sit down and we would connect quickly. We kind of get along. But that isn't always the case with that person who's been a real, in your mind, a toxic person. So a couple of things I would do around that. You're not going to change that person, okay? And so I would just consider there's something about that person you don't understand. And sometimes it's like, be the bigger person, be the adult in the room. You have to get interested in what's important to the other person. Put your perspective aside. I like to say, here's what I want. I'm going to put it aside. Let me find out what you want. And it starts to open a dialogue. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, but you have to put your beliefs of how toxic that person is to the side. And you're taking risk because, that person could hurt you. That person can do something against you. So you have to be smart about it. But certainly being stronger about what you want doesn't help you build a bridge. And then maybe with that toxic person, you find one thing you can agree with, not everything. And then that can start, you can't fix everything, but find one. That's how I would approach that. And I've used it well. And I've also failed often also. Because when you see someone who's a toxic person, you know what you want to do? You want to reinforce in your mind, that's a toxic person. That doesn't help anything. So it's hard to do, but it's possible.
Gotcha. Okay. So now that you've retired,
yeah,
and you're living a life of luxury over there.
yeah.
Tell us, what would you do if you had to go back and talk to your former self? What aspect of your career path would you change and why?
Yeah. I've thought about that a lot. Again, I've gotten a little more self-aware the last several years. And I think I missed a lot of opportunities by doing something that I do personally when I'm not being my best. I can be very judgmental. I can quickly decide someone's not worthy of my time. When I'm at my worst, I can quickly decide I'm going to go a different direction. And I know I've missed big opportunities to connect with the right people if I was just a little more open, listened a little longer, was a little more interested. So, like I've said, these principles, I wish I knew them 20 years ago, but I think that's something that I can see now, that if I was a little more available to other people and then quickly decide, in my book, I think it's chapter 3. It's about purpose. And this is the self-awareness. Everyone has something in them that's unique, that's purposeful in how they are, and they have a dark side. They have a behavior that they're not very proud about under pressure and emotion. Learning what that is can help you avoid a lot of problems. So that's the self-awareness I wish I had years ago. Still not too late, hopefully.
Well, it's not too late, Dean. We have a couple questions here from the panelists. one of the questions is from Elena Figueroa. What is the role of executive coaching and in uncovering your strengths and opportunities? Much aligned with these principles in your book.
Yeah, the role of executive, well, you know, you can work in an organization that supports that self-awareness and self-development, or maybe you don't. But I would say this: if you have the opportunity in your organization to get coaching, to find out more about your strengths and weaknesses, you should take it on. If you don't, you can do it yourself. I'll give you an example of something that I've used that's helped me from a coaching perspective. Two examples that anybody on this call can do. So this is easy to do. Number one, you think about board of directors. In fact, Jonathan, you told me you're on a board meeting this morning and you're on a board. And, you know, boards are chosen to give advice to the CEOs, right? And now I've never been a CEO, so I've never had a board of directors hired to help me. But what's stopping me from forming my own board of directors? So I have a board of directors. I have 5 people that I trust, and they trust me, and they help me. And they don't pay, I don't pay them. They're on non-paid board of directors, but they're my board of directors. What's stopping anyone from bringing people around that want you to be successful to formally sit down and give you advice? So John, you can have your own board of directors. And John, you've got an issue or challenge, you can get some help. Getting help is a strength. The other thing I would do is mentor and be mentored. One of the joys of my career was being able to mentor others. And I learned more by mentoring others than otherwise. It's surprising. The mentor can learn a lot. And in fact, reverse mentoring. I have my friend Jenna, who's a brilliant marketer at Facebook. Hopefully she's on the call. You know, she's younger than me. She went to the University of Miami, and she's mentored me on things to get the next generation to help a person who has got experience and age, but maybe can't see things the right way. So if be a mentor and go find someone to mentor you, and I think you can get way ahead in this life.
Awesome. Good stuff, Dean. Another question from Catalin Josil. As we learn to thrive in this current environment and align and adjust ourselves accordingly, can you give the 2 skills or components that are more likely to help people find success?
Yeah, 2. I got one for sure. 2, there's many, but I think the one thing is there has to be an appreciation for trust. Very easy word, trust. Small, right? Trust. Nothing can happen without trust. So when you think about your relationships, and I'm not just talking at the work, but I'm talking about your family, I'm talking about anyone, your friends, do you have real trust or do you have mistrust? Because nothing can happen without trust. So I would have an appreciation for building trust, for appreciating trust. When you have mistrust, fix it. Don't let it hang out there forever.
How do you fix it? How do you fix the mistrust?
Well, it's a great point. Acknowledge that the trust is not there. Look for the source of the mistrust. Maybe it's you. Probably it's you. Make it about you. I caused the mistrust. What can I do differently? You know, it's not hard to apologize. You know, we're humans, and humans are not perfect. But recognizing there's something wrong here, because you can't get anything done without trust. I mean, think about the workforce. You have a team, and you're giving some advice, and they don't trust your judgment, or they don't trust your motivation. You think anything good's going to happen? So focus around trust. There's a great book, when you're done reading mine, which I read, is a great book by Stephen Covey called The Speed of Trust. I'd recommend that to everybody because nothing can happen without trust. So having trust, and then I would just say building some tenacity in yourself, knowing that things aren't going to go right. And how do you respond when things don't go right? I think that's one of the key success. It's not from privilege. It's not from money. It's not from education. I mean, I know more highly educated people that don't have the tenacity to work through problems than you can believe. So I'm a big believer in being tenacious, figuring out what that looks like, and being a grinder can help you be successful because everything doesn't work as planned.
Okay. And now of those skills you just mentioned,
Yeah.
which was the single most important one and the single most important lesson you learned throughout your career?
Yeah, I think without a doubt, the willingness and the inner strength to work harder when things don't go right. Everyone's a superstar when things are going well. But when things don't go right, and you know what? It's a muscle. It's a muscle. You have to keep on doing that. The more you learn to overcome difficulties and challenges, and that person who's unfair, or that business partner that is dishonest, or that family member that's distant, the more you learn to overcome those challenges, it builds in your capability and nothing can stop you. Because in this world, in business and life, there's obstacles thrown at you every day. And you have to be not even surprised at the obstacles anymore. You just have, and I would say, let me turn around, Jonathan.
Yeah.
What made you, besides you know, listen, I've met so many athletes and they're physically gifted. I get that, but that's not, I know that's nothing. What made you to get to your level, a superstar athlete versus a good athlete, which you could have done also? What do you think that difference was?
The difference was the tenacity you spoke about, which in other words would be discipline. I've met a lot of very, very good athletes. They weren't disciplined enough, tenacious enough to hold themselves accountable. And so from a selfish perspective, my competitive drive and nature is what kept me disciplined, wanting to be the best and willing to sacrifice whatever it took to be the best. From there, I also learned, to your point, to trust. I had to trust my safeties that were going to make the play. My quarterback was going to make the throw. My running back was going to run and score the touchdown. So I had to trust a lot of people, 21 people on any given Sunday, Saturday or Sunday. And being able to learn to deal with, as you mentioned, people aren't perfect, dealing with the different personalities. So selfishly making myself the best I could be, and then learning to rely and trust on others to do their job. And hopefully they were striving and aspiring to be the best that they could be as well. And when you put that combination together, fortunately, it gave me a lot of success at college and in the NFL.
Yeah, that's great. They're all transferable no matter what your vocation is, no matter what your job is. It's you know, there's no substitute for that. And I like the word you use, discipline. And I know this, the athletes that are great, they're up every morning and the sun's not up.
5 a.m.
And every morning, and they really pay attention what they put into their body, and that takes tremendous discipline. And that's something that's underappreciated. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah.
No, thanks, man. We have a question from EJ Myers.
My brother. He's my brother from the same mother. Okay.
I knew you recognized that name. EJ wants you to talk about the importance of going fast in today's VUCA and agile world, and what are the skills needed to be successful?
Yeah, EJ, thanks for jumping on, my younger brother, and good question. So in my mind, the last several years, I think the organizations that win are the organizations that go fast, that are figuring out how to break down barriers. So I'd say there's a couple of ways to do that. And everybody wants to go fast. At Coke, we had a program called Agility, and they brought in coaches to be agile. And then there's some success there. But it has to be in everything you do, because if you're not going fast, you're falling behind. the world's changed tremendously. There's no room for slow, but you have to be thoughtful and aligned to go fast. So one thing I think about the speed and agility type of thing that I would say about that is the alignment up front on what you want to get done and adjusting often will allow you to go fast. And without that, you can't do it. The other thing is, which we didn't talk much about this, is this idea of essentialism. And that also is a philosophy and a process about do what's most essential. And you have to say no to really good things to say yes to great things. And I would say that about people. You have to say no to some relationships that get in the way to allow you to go fast with the ones that matter. And if you can do that, I think that enables speed like nothing else.
Do you have an example of when you had to do that?
Oh,
That's probably the hardest thing, especially I'm obviously a little younger than you, but that's probably the hardest thing is to recognize the really good and the great. So I would love to hear an example, Dean.
yeah. Well, let's take an example I'll take two examples in the workforce, okay? There was always a philosophy that more is better. Work, 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 work. You know, like they say, what, you know, like the ants are working to build a mound, but so what? They're busy. Being busy is not the end of the game. So you have to give people the permission to say, stop being so busy, be thoughtful and work on the best things. Now I've done that in my career once I became more aware. And you know what? Your team will love that. Your team will love it. You give them permission because, you know, the problem is that people think they need to be busy to be valuable because everybody in a job wants to keep their job, I would say, and they want to get a better job, I would say. So they think being busy is the answer. So from a leadership perspective, you've got to help them see what's most important and focus on that. That can happen every day. On a personal side, you know, we have friends that are longtime friends. And sometimes you grow a certain way and they grow a certain way. And because you've known someone for 20 years, for my philosophy is if it's not working for me anymore, those relationships, then I don't keep them that active because it's just not valuable anymore. It's not being mean. It's saying you've gone your direction, I've gone mine. I'm moving in a different direction. So I think as a human, as a person, it's better that way. It's more authentic that way.
I hear you. I hear you.
Right?
We have a couple more questions, but first want to just stop and say thanks, Dean, for taking this time on our Thrive in Any Environment webinar. Really appreciate you taking the time, one, to talk about your book, and two, to actually give a signed book to the first 100 individuals who contribute and donate to the U. I mean, that's awesome. And, you know, I know you're retired and you're living the life of luxury as
I'm not really retired, but
yeah, you're retired. You know, you're technically retired, but you're a workaholic, so you can't stop. So
I'm not 24/7 anymore. Let's put it that way.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. But we have the link in the chat. If you go, you sign up for the link, contribute, you will get Dean's signed book, The Boardroom Buddha. It's a really interesting book. It all, frankly, applies. As I'm listening to you, I can equate to some of the things that happened to me playing football. I can equate to after football life. And those principles, especially now when we have to adapt and we have to adjust to our COVID environment and COVID situation, you know, it's very, very powerful and very, very useful.
Yeah, thanks,
we have
John.
a question anytime.
You know, on the book thing, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm, you know, what I'm doing now, I am semi-retired. I'm not really retired. I'm just not working 24/7. But I have a few really terrific consulting opportunities. I work with some executives and how they lead teams, and I'm going to do a little of that. You know, I'm limited on that time, but I'm going to pick a handful of people that I'm going to mentor and coach and consult. And then eventually I'll do some speaking when there's meetings show up again, and they will show up again. This thing is going to come out a different way. And but thanks, and I'm happy to support you. And look at the relationships that we've developed from our university. So happy to give back, and I hope everybody else on the call. You don't have to be a Miami alum to give to the U also. Okay,
Good
go
point.
ahead.
Good point. Yeah, just keep giving to you. We definitely appreciate it. But let me not miss a question here. We have a question from Dorian Williams. Dean, is there any particular person who has impacted or helped shape the person you are today? And what is your family upbringing?
Okay. I don't think there's any particular person. I've been fortunate to meet some amazing people along the way that you learn from. I had a coach, shout out to Jim Motroni, who helped me think differently about myself. I thought that was very impactful. And Jim's a great guy. And I've had some great bosses, leaders, not all, but some, and some have taught me so much about myself. My friend Javier Guzzueta was a great mentor to me, and Marco Shaughnessy early in my career, who's passed away now, but I've had some mentors. So a few people here and there. My friends that are on my board, they help me keep me straight. They're Miami guys, but they keep me straight, and they can call me out when I'm, off the rail. So I'm lucky with that. My upbringing, I grew up in Albany, New York, in the city of Albany, New York, and had no vision, no future about doing anything but go to college somewhere. I went to the U and played baseball for a few months for the U as a walk-on. And I got cut eventually. And Coach Frazier, says, you're just not good enough. And I knew that. But Coach Frazier also cut Mike Piazza too. So maybe we're the same. So
No, stop, let me stop you there. You're not the same. Okay, keep going.
Okay. Well, he's in Cooperstown. He's in Cooperstown, and I'm here with you. So I don't know. I think I'm winning. Okay. So and then it turned into, I was a grinder. Right? I didn't have anything with any future, any vision, and it's a little bit like a Forrest Gump movie. I took a job. Okay, I'll take this job, and things turned out pretty well, and met some great people along the way, and so no one could have envisioned this life, and I'm pressing hard to figure out what the next 20 years look like. So making it good.
Okay, and Jose Armario has a question for you. You already answered part of it about walking onto the U for baseball, but how did that change you? You got cut. You're nowhere near Mike Piazza, but how did that change you when you got cut?
Well, the coach asked me to be the team manager, and they had some good coaches in that team. They had Skip Bertman was the assistant coach, and Ron Polk was the assistant coach, and they're all Hall of Fame coaches in their own right. So they knew what they're doing. I said, listen, I can't be a manager. It's not my thing. I can't carry the bag. Could you get me a job? And they got me a job on campus at the Rathskeller on campus, and I worked there for 4 years and met amazing people. So how that changed me? I don't know. I was proud that I went for it. It didn't really change me from that perspective. Everybody reaches their point, and certainly in athletics, and I wasn't up to it. But it helped me get a job on campus, and it's something I always appreciate.
Okay, cool. We got another question from Andres Escobar. What leadership failure have you faced where you needed to reset the plan and the mindset of the entire team? And what did you learn from it, and how did it influence your future projects?
Yeah, I would say a leadership failure is often related to when I violated those principles. Okay. And I think my leadership failure was not really too quick to judge, too quick to get people moving in the wrong direction, not being humble to adjust, and everybody knew it. Okay. And I would say within my team, if I'm perceived as all about me, then I can see now at times that doesn't work. When it's not about you, principle one, when you're more interested in the others, great success happens. So I've had examples of that. I've had also examples of, again, I think just not digging enough to find out what's going on, which doesn't lead to good results. And it's something I watch for because it really happens under pressure. You feel the need to get something done. The emotions, remember, these principles really work well when there's emotion and pressure, and we resort to bad behavior sometimes. So as a leadership team, I think being consistent and being authentic has always helped me. So the question was, what have I done to change that? People know me, they don't have to guess what I'm about. And that was one of the stronger skills I was able to develop and exhibit when I was successful. The customer trusted me because they would ask me a question and they wouldn't have to guess whether I'm giving the real answer or a part answer or the filtered answer. When you build that trust and the authenticity, everything happens fast. They're not questioning my intent. That's the best side of things. When you're acting less than authentic and less than open, it leaves other possibilities that aren't the best things. Hopefully that helps. Complicated question.
We have a question from Stephen Thomas. How do you align, motivate team members who have varying whys as their motivators?
Yeah, it's a great question because, of course, everyone's not the same. And I don't know how big of a team, Stephen, you're looking at, but trying to treat each individual a certain way is beneficial. Now, it takes more time. Now, at the end of the day, there's principles and there's goals and there's a philosophy. And if you don't have people on your team that aren't attuned to the bigger picture of what it's going to take to win, then you need new team members. Sorry. I mean, that's a tough thing to do, but every individual reacts differently to stimulus and strategy. So I would say spend a little time with your team members, one-on-one, have lunch. I know it sounds simple, but it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen because everybody's too busy. And then you might learn something about that person which would be appreciated. And so you try to build everybody up in their own way, part of a team. But I really do think, and there's a lot, of discussion about team and building teams. You need to build a team that helps you win. That's still got to be the goal. When you played for the New York Jets, Jonathan, that cornerback wasn't there because that cornerback was good friends with the coach. I'm positive of that. So they're there to make that team win. And Stephen, that ultimately is your job. So that has to be done through people. Hopefully it helps. And Stephen's a great golfer, is my golfing buddy. Good. Thanks for jumping on, Stephen.
We have a question from Josh Martin. How do you think business and business leaders will need to change once we emerge from this COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, great question, Josh. I think so much has changed and is going to continue changing. We have to be more open to where people are and how they need to work. So in a similar question from, about motivation that Stephen talked about, Josh talking about ways we work. You know what? Guess what? We can do a lot of things through video. Let it happen, okay? Be flexible. Everyone's not going to feel the same coming out of COVID. They might have had different trauma, different issues. They have different concerns. So I think it's going to create a business leader that's going to have to say many, many, many more ways to make this thing happen versus a literal linear way. The other side, which is great for Joshua Martin, who's a brilliant digital marketing person, is that digital is everything. Now, people have been saying that for a long time. Guess what? It is. We've got to be great on the digital applications, and it's going to take a lot of training to do so. So I think that's going to be a big part coming out of it. I see great. I can't wait. I can see a time a year from now when people aren't afraid of their health. Hopefully, I think business and individuals will thrive. It's like a 1 year pause in a way. You know, things have been so restricted. It's going to be amazing, I think, when we get out of this and people are going to want to do great things and open to new ideas. That's what's going to really show up.
Awesome. Okay. We have the last question. We're running short on time. It's from Norm Parsons. Hi, Norm. Glad to see you're on. What life lessons did you learn from your Rathskeller experience, Dean?
Wow. Well, Norm, you know what? Probably more than going to class. That's for sure. You know what? People do business with people. And I don't care if you're 18, 19, 20 years old or 15 years old or 60 years old, you only can get things done through people. And I worked with some great people there. You start out, and I was in the kitchen from the 8 o'clock to 2 in the morning shift 3 days a week. And then I did night shifts later on. And I think the life lessons are you bring people in from all over the world. I mean, the Rathskeller University of Miami brings people from everywhere. I was just a kid from Albany, New York, and I met people from everywhere. And so you learn to appreciate where people come from and get comfortable with diversity. That's one of the biggest learnings at the university that helped me. And I tell you, it helped me in my career, because if you're not comfortable with people that are different than you, then it's going to be challenging for you. You have to put yourself in a position. And not that everybody thinks the same or are the same and acts the same, but they're all look at things differently. And the Rathskeller put me together with 100 people and more of different interactions that I think helped me get my graduate degree there also. So at the MBA at the school. So a lot of great things from that work experience. You have to put yourself out there to be with other people. You have to do that. You don't learn much sitting in your dorm room reading a book all day. You really don't.
Awesome. Awesome.
Norm, good to hear from you, Norman.
Well, Dean, thank you for, again, taking the time. You're giving 100 signed Boardroom Buddha books to anybody who contributes. We put the link up in the chat. I want to thank you again. This was very, very awesome and really very, very applicable to what I remember my experiences and then how I'm moving forward outside of football. So this has been great. I have one last thing before we go. I need you, Dean, to throw up the U so we can take a picture, because we all know it's all about the U.
Well, we could do that. I know how to do that.
Wait, you got to back yours up just a little bit.